Hello everyone, I am Farandrum from Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering, Bangalore. The topic for the presentation is Introduction to ER Diagram from the course Database Management Systems. First, we will see what is ER diagram or Entity Relational Diagram. The Entity Relational Diagram or model is a model for identifying entities to be represented in the database and representation of how those entities are related. The ER data model specifies enterprise schema that represents the overall logical structure of a database graphically. The entity relationship diagram explains the relationship among the entities present in the database. In short, the ER diagram is the structural format of a database. For example, suppose we design a school database. In this database, the student will be an entity with attributes like address, name, ID, age, etc. The address can be another entity with attributes like city, street name, pin code, etc. and there will be a relationship between them. Components of ER diagram. ER model consists of entities, attributes, relationship. Entity. An entity is an object of entity type and a set of all entities is called an entity set. For example, E1 is an entity having entity type student and the set of all students is called entity set. Types. There are two types of entity, strong entity and weak entity. Strong entity. A strong entity is a type of entity that has a key attribute. Strong entity does not depend on any other entity in the schema. It has a primary key that helps in identifying it uniquely. Weak entity. An entity type has a key attribute that uniquely identifies each entity in the entity set. But some entity type exists for which key attributes can't be defined. These are called weak entity types. Attributes. Attributes are the properties that define the entity type. There are four types of attributes: key or primary attribute, composite attribute, multi-valued attribute, and derived attribute. Key or primary attribute. The attribute which uniquely identifies each entity in the entity set is called the key attribute. Composite attribute. An attribute composed of many other attributes is called a composite attribute. Multi-valued attribute. An attribute consisting of more than one value for a given entity. Derived attribute. An attribute that can be derived from other attributes of the entity type is known as derived attribute. Relationship. A relationship type represents the association between entity types. Cardinality. The number of times an entity of an entity set participates in a relationship set is known as cardinality. Cardinality can be of different types. One-to-one. In this type of cardinality mapping, an entity in A is connected to at most one entity in B, or entity in B is connected to at most one entity in B. For example, one department can be headed by one HOD. One-to-many. In this type of cardinality mapping, an entity in A is associated with any number of entities in B. For example, one department can have many faculties. Many-to-one. In this type of cardinality mapping, an entity in A is connected to at most one entity in B, or we can say a unit or item in B can be associated with any number of entities or items in A. For example, many faculties can work in one department. Many-to-many. In this type of cardinality mapping, an entity in A is associated with any number of entities in B and an entity in B is associated with any number of entities in A. For example, many employees can work on one project and one project can have many employees. Now we will see how to draw a ER diagram. The very first step is identifying all the entities and place them in a rectangle and labeling them accordingly. The next step is to identify the relationship between them and place them accordingly using the diamond and make sure that relationships are not connected to each other. Attach attributes to the entities properly. Remove redundant entities and relationships. Now we will see the symbols used in ER diagram. A strong entity or an entity is represented using a rectangle. A weak entity is represented using a concentric rectangle. Relationship is represented using a diamond shape. Identifying relationship is represented using a concentric diamond shape. An attribute is represented by an oval shape, and a primary or a key attribute is represented by an oval shape with the attribute underlined. Multivalued attribute is represented using concentric oval shape. A composite attribute is represented using the oval shape, which are having two or more attributes representing in oval shape. A derived attribute is represented using a dashed oval shape. A partial key attribute is represented using a oval shape with dashed underline. The partial participation between the entities or the relationship and entities is represented using a straight line. Total participation between two entities or an entity and a relationship is represented using two straight lines. Now we will see an example for ER diagram using the bank database. In this database, there are 5 entities: bank, bank branch, account, customer and loans. Bank branch is a weak entity and others are strong entities. Branches is a relationship which is an identifying relationship between the bank and the bank branch which has total participation, which is represented using a double line. The bank has 3 attributes: code, name and address, where code is the key or primary attribute. A bank branch has 2 attributes: address and branch number, where branch number is a partial key attribute. The bank branch maintains account, where maintain is a relationship between bank branch and account. The account has 3 attributes: account number, type and balance, where account number is the key or primary attribute. Account is held by the customer, where held by is the relationship between the account and customer. The customer has 4 attributes: customer ID, name, address and phone, where customer ID is the primary or key attribute. The bank branch offers loans, where offer is the relationship between bank branch and loan. Loans have 3 attributes: loan ID, amount and type, where loan ID is the key or primary attribute. Thank you for watching the video.